Just it's coming up in the mind past couple of days, just the return to Abhayagiri, just the sense of the mind, the body returning, and experience of a place that feels old, like an old home or something, but because the mind is always changing, it doesn't really actually have that feel. I was asked by some of my family members who I was just with right before I got here, are you prepared to go back? Think about what it'll be like to go back after being away for 8 months at the Hermitage. And there was this sense, it's going to be different from my previous experience. And there's sort of like just starting to go to pujas again after, I think in these last couple of days I've attended puja more here than I did in the 8 months at the Hermitage. And so just watching the mind kind of sometimes resistant to following, wanting to follow the schedule or kind of fall into line or do a chore, whatever it might be, just that kind of my time first. And I'm reflecting on something I remember that Ajahn actually told me when we were talking about monks who do long periods of tudong, and how it's a rare monk who can really do that successfully, because the tendency is once one stays away from a monastery, you start to develop your own habits and blinders around those habits. But then when you come back to a monastery, it can be quite difficult, and there can be really a losing of a skill one has in living in community with others. And so while I had that in the Hermitage, being the top dog there, of a couple of monks, it has a little bit of a different feel. And then coming into a community where there's much more of a structure, a group cohesiveness that's much larger. I was just about to enter the Dhamma hall and I thought, maybe that's not appropriate to wear a jacket in here, like a fleece jacket. And just something little like that coming up, it's not, there's a lot of other ways that one possibly sees, especially for the monks that have been here a long time. We don't see that we've brought in all of these habits and skills and developments around or relating to the structure of the monastery, the other people who are here. And it's not even necessarily seen every day, but it is something to highlight in one's mind, to kind of say, I do, as a guest who comes here for a few days or a week, things can seem quite new, and then you're here for a couple of months and one gets more comfortable with how things are. And so I think there's a double-edged sword with that, kind of seeing how there are quite beneficial and helpful skills that we're learning about how we relate to other people, how we relate to being with the structures that the monastery is encouraging us to uphold. But also that there can be a sense like what I'm seeing now is just the comfort that I had over the last 8 months at the Hermitage. And just sort of the difference in lifestyle there is, it's one thing being somebody who is senior there and making many of the decisions, but then that can have unfortunate consequences, because then you come back to a place like this and say, I don't really want to go to puja, or I'd rather do this during the morning chore period or whatever might happen. And so that there's a skill that has to be learned again, living in community, living with many monks. And then there's also that carefulness that has to be had around the seeking of comfort, the seeking of getting used to things, and how the structures aren't the only things that are carrying us. They're very helpful, but as Ajahn, I remember, talked about once, they're like a crutch. And so you do use a crutch if you need it, but you also have to be aware that there's times when you need to walk without that crutch, or not rely on things so much, and try not to get so comfortable that you forget that it's actually not a natural thing to have a crutch. And that's not so easy if you're actually living with the structures that you have, and it can be day to day like that. But if you start examining it, then we can relate to these relationships that we have here, and the schedule, the structure, just all of the different ways we do things in a particular manner that allows us to not get too comfortable, to not get so addicted to that sense of just kind of knowing or no longer kind of being alive to the nuances of the life here. So it's sort of a double-edged sword around using and being part of the structures we have here, but at the same time try not to get too attached or comfortable around them.